and welcome to this week's live weekly warm-up. This one is back to the normal. We've had a lot of fun doing our mistakes over the past few weeks. I can't remember what last week was, but I think last week was a normal one. Really excited as always to be here, and I hope that I can help you out with some warm-up exercises to work on for this week. This week, I have a little bit more of an advanced exercise. And actually, this is an exercise that I don't do all that often myself, but it has a lot of benefits and is really good. And as always, if you think about it in the right way, then you'll get a lot out of it. So what this exercise is octave long tones. So basically what is happening is we're playing across octaves. And the reason why this is so beneficial is because it helps to really hear the intonation, because an octave is a very easy interval to hear. So if your octaves are out of tune, it'll be relatively apparent to you, hopefully. And it's also great because it's really big leaps, big intervals. And it's not like the 12th long tones where you just press down the register key. That's actually a bigger interval, but it's actually easier, I think, to land that. The octave is a little bit different because the registers of the clarinet aren't naturally doing octaves. So you have to be really precise and really conscientious and thoughtful about where you're aiming before you move. So let me go ahead and demonstrate the exercise, and then I'll talk about how to get the most out of it. So all it's going to be is starting down on low E, and then up to the other shallow mo E, then an octave higher up to clarion E, and then an octave higher up to altissimo E. So let me go ahead and demonstrate that, and then I'm going to go back down, of course, as well. Almost made it through the whole thing with all good transitions, but it's tricky, as you can imagine. Doing those octave leaps is a lot, and it takes a good steady airstream, a good steady embouchure to make those transitions really smooth. One other thing, as you're doing this, you absolutely don't have to go all the way into the altissimo. You could just do 3 E's from the lowest one up and then up one more into the clarion, or you can do all the way into the altissimo. And the other thing with this, of course, too, is you can do it on different notes. So often if I'm doing this in an actual warm-up session, I'll do E's like I just did, and then I'll go up a half step and do F's, and then F sharps, and so on, usually to G. Sometimes I'll go all the way to the high C if I'm feeling really ambitious, but not often. Oh, excellent. Aspen Wilburn just posted that they're new here. So welcome to your first live weekly warm-up. I hope you're enjoying it so far. So octaves is what we're doing in practicing those big leaps. I want to go over some things that can go wrong and some things that you might hear in your own playing that you can work to iron out as you work on this. So the first thing is going to be to make sure that the transitions are smooth finger-wise. It's really easy to get... You could hear there was like some extra notes in there, and that's just a finger coordination issue. You have to make sure all those fingers are moving exactly at the same time. Another thing is voicing issues. So especially going between the clarion and the altissimo, you have to make sure that you're as steady as possible, but you're in good position to make both of those work. It's really common to get one of these two issues. You might have, actually maybe 3 issues. One would be where you go for the high E and it doesn't come out. That means that you're voicing the lower E too low and not aiming and supporting well to get up to that altissimo. The other thing that could happen, which is the opposite, is going too high. And that's when you'll get the squeak up there and end up playing a high A instead of a high E. It just means you're overshooting and trying too hard to get up to that high note. And then the last, probably more common issue is something like this. So you could hear how it sort of scooped up into the higher note. And that's an indication that you're still aiming too low on the lower E, but your brain's correcting really quickly on the high E to get up to where you need to be. So the goal is just really, really steady. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, that's a thing to keep an ear out for and work on with this, is to make sure that the notes are as even as possible. It's really easy to get something like this, where the highest notes really pop out. What you need to do is to sort of anticipate where that note's going to be, support it really well with enough air, support your low notes even more so it balances out, and then just let those higher notes sort of float on top of the lower notes with good support. So that's it, I think, for this exercise. I hope you have fun trying it out for this week. One last thing that I want to mention is just all of the normal long tone stuff, of course, applies to this. Slur everything, make sure that you're listening to the sound, listen to the beginning, middle, end of the note, or transition to the next note, and make sure that that's all going really smooth. And now that I mentioned that, too, one other little thing, coming down, especially, like always, coming down big leaps, it's a little bit okay to lightly tongue as you come down to the lower notes, especially from the altissimo to the clarion E. You can very lightly tongue it. And it should still sound slurred. That's how lightly the tongue should be. And that would be the only case in a long tone exercise where I would suggest any kind of tonguing at all. But if you can do it slurred, then that's great, as long as your air is staying steady and that you have a great connection between the notes. It's the way that the sound comes out, the way that the transition sounds. That's what's the most important. So thank you so much for watching this week's live weekly warm-up, especially if you are new. It's great to have you. And I hope to see you next week on the next live weekly warm-up.